Well, a warm welcome along to this week's Assist, sponsored by Free Super Tips. I'm Warren Ashurst, and with Mark Langdon and Dan Childs on a well-deserved holiday. Now, not gone together, by the way. They have gone separately. I'm joined this week by Liam Flin and Tom McGarry to look through the week's action and hopefully point you in the path of some profit along the way. We will start with the big match of the week very shortly at Old Trafford, where Manchester United and Chelsea go head-to-head. But guys, before we do get into that, of course, we've had the first Premier League managerial sacking of the season. Erik Ten Hag has gone this week. Liam, we'll start with you. I mean, it seems daft saying this, bearing in mind that any time over the last 6 months, Ten Hag could have gone. But I was almost a little bit surprised at the timing. Were you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's obviously quite common nowadays that clubs pull the trigger on managers a little bit prematurely. But you can't say United did that with Ten Hag. I think he was given ample time, really, and I felt that he probably should have gone last season. Obviously, the FA Cup win maybe changed the dynamic of that, and I felt as though because United stuck by him then, you would have expected them to see it for a little bit longer, but also you can't ignore the situation they were in. I mean, you know, he started to leave his mark on this squad. I think more than £600 million spent during his tenure, so at that point you become the one to blame because the players on the pitch are the ones you've put there. So I think the style of play didn't help him as well. I think generally, you know, United under Ten Hag have lacked a bit of urgency and pace. And I think there's just been that tendency to invite pressure from lesser teams. And yeah, I mean, 14th in the Premier League, just 3 wins to their name, 8 goals in 9 matches is really an abysmal return. So in that sense, it felt inevitable. But yeah, as you say, the timing was an odd one, given they, you know, could have dismissed him any time in the last 6 months to a year, really.
What did you make of the timing, Tom? Was it about right, do you think? Or he looked like he'd maybe sort of rode the storm a little bit, but obviously the defeat at West Ham was the final straw for the owners.
Well, that's it. He's felt like he's had these moments, hasn't he? Almost over his entire tenure where he's had some really bad results. And then we're thinking, is he going to be fired off the back of that? I mean, just this season, the 3-0 losses to Liverpool and Tottenham, but he managed to ride that storm. And you know, United weren't that bad, were they, against West Ham? They were a little unlucky not to win the game. They had plenty of chances. The dubious VAR call for the penalty for West Ham that won the game as well. So I don't think we were quite expecting it off the back of that game. But as Liam says, his record, particularly in the league over last season and the start of this, has not been good enough for a team like United. And, you know, 8 goals in the Premier League so far this season, and then they go into the EFL Cup under Ruud van Nistelrooy and score 5. So, I mean, that doesn't help the case for any supporters, if there were any left, of Erik Ten Hag. But yeah, it's felt like the writing has been on the wall, and United, over the opening couple of months of this season, have almost just been styling it out, wanting to keep him in because they backed him in the summer. They don't want to then sack him in late August, early September or anything like that. So they've stuck it out as long as they realistically can, and now they've made their move.
And it looks like Ruben Amorim is going to be the man who replaces Ten Hag at Old Trafford. Certainly very close as we're speaking now on Thursday morning to be appointed as the new boss at Old Trafford. And of course, if he is, he won't be in charge on Sunday, unlikely, but he'll be watching on, I imagine, from the stands as United play host to Chelsea in Sunday's 4:30 kickoff. And, well, it's going to be an intriguing encounter because of what we've seen of both two teams in the last couple of weeks or so. It's hard to kind of work out where both of them are, really, with no real consistency. In terms of the prices, well, Man United 8-5 to claim the victory. It's 5-2 the draw, and 8-5 Chelsea as well. So the bookies have it relatively close in terms of how they see Sunday's encounter. Can we take much from the midweek action, do we think, Liam, in terms of how both teams got on in the EFL Cup?
It's tricky, isn't it? Because you've obviously got to look at, you know, teams and how much they rotated. I think, you know, Chelsea, they did rotate a little bit. Newcastle, I mean, they've got enough players to be able to do that, haven't they? So you've got to have a look really at how seriously some of these teams are taking this tournament. I mean, you look at Manchester City, Pep Guardiola was quite vocal saying he's, you know, not going to be wasting energy on the competition. But then you had a situation like Arsenal, for example, last night had a relatively soft fixture compared to what they could have had against Preston, and they went pretty strong in that game. So I think it comes down to, you know, how strong the teams were in those games.
In terms of United for this, Tom, I mean, I suppose there's a little bit of added pressure, shall we say, for the players to perform, bearing in mind, as I say, the new manager could be in the stands watching on, but it's a big chance for them to make an impact here and try and impress him.
Yeah, absolutely. They want to state their claim and show that they deserve to be there for the long term under the new manager. And I think the result against Leicester will help in the week. United went really strong in that game, didn't they? Only really Andre Onana was left out in goal. Everyone else, you would say, is more often than not a regular starter. Bruno Fernandes played and finally got on the score sheet this season. Players looked like they had a smile on their face. So, yeah, I think United will go into this game. That will have boosted their confidence, that result. Don't think we can read too much, as Liam says, into the Chelsea result against Newcastle. They were much changed. It was more their Conference League lineup, if you like, in that game. So, yeah, I'm expecting an interesting and potentially open game on Sunday.
Well, we'll talk, of course, a bit more about Manchester United and how they may well sort of set up, I suppose, against Chelsea on Sunday. But just talking about Chelsea for the time being, Liam, in terms of potential top 4 challenge this season, of what you've seen of them in the last few weeks, are they a potential top 4 team?
I think they're certainly going to be in contention. I think the depth of their squad helps them in that situation. Obviously, they still have European commitments like some of the other clubs in and around there, but obviously they're not as intense as Champions League match days. And Chelsea do have the luxury of, like Tom said a moment ago, pretty much putting out a completely different 11 for that contest. They're not really going to be giving too many minutes to key players in the Europa Conference League. I think the way they've settled a little bit this season is promising. I mean, Cole Palmer, Nicholas Jackson, Noni Madueke, they've all come into the team and settled this season. They look a much more cohesive unit. And I think Enzo Maresca's done a really good job since he's come in. I think we're probably more looking at a top 4 finish maybe next season for Chelsea as opposed to this campaign. In terms of who could finish above them, I mean, Aston Villa, I think it's bold to oppose them at the moment. They just keep going, and you think at one point it's not going to be sustainable, but ultimately they do keep winning games. I mean, Tottenham, Postecoglou has obviously been bold about winning a trophy in his second season, and maybe now the focus will shift to the League Cup a little bit, and then obviously, I mean, Manchester United, we don't know where they're going to end up. So I think Chelsea could be up there, but I think they'll probably just miss out in the end.
I mean, United 14th, Tom, in the table at the moment. Is it out of the ordinary to suggest that they could still make the top 4 if Ruben Amorim was to get a song out of the team quickly?
Well, it would be a really remarkable achievement if he could. I mean, you look at the points-wise, 7 points off the top 4, so that's certainly not insurmountable. And if they can build up a head of steam, this is a manager, Ruben Amorim, who's used to winning, isn't he? He's made a spectacular start to the season with Sporting off the back of winning the title with them last term. So he's got that winning mentality that United need. I think they're going to struggle, though. It's not just the points gap, it's the amount of teams they have to come through and finish above to get into that top 4. We're all thinking, I certainly am, that the top 3, Manchester City, Liverpool and Arsenal, will be pretty locked down come the end of the campaign. They're playing for that one spot in the top 4. And I slightly disagree with Liam. I probably think Chelsea are the front runners to finish 4th. They'd be my favourites to get it in there. And then United have got to battle past them. They've got to battle past Villa, Tottenham, Newcastle could still come into the reckoning, and potentially 1 or 2 others as well. So I think it'd be really difficult for United. The good thing for Amorim is they're so far back in that regard. Maybe for this season anyway, the pressure's slightly off, and it's just about building and finishing as high as they can.
Well, bear in mind how they did against Leicester in the EFL Cup in midweek and Chelsea's defensive record. You'd think that United will be on the front foot from the start on Sunday and going for goals. Liam, what are you looking at here in terms of your best bet for Sunday's big game?
Yeah, I'm going to lean towards Chelsea, and I'm going Chelsea draw no bet. I'm fully aware of the new manager bounce, and we saw that in action, obviously, in the League Cup game for United. But I don't think that's going to be the case at Old Trafford this weekend. I think it's been obviously a very turbulent week for these Manchester United players. Have been both of these teams obviously in EFL Cup action in the week, but United have had to juggle that with obviously this off-field news. And while Van Nistelrooy is there at the moment, I think the fact that Ruben Amorim is on his way, whether that be in the international break or whenever, that's going to have its effect on these players, because ultimately they are Erik Ten Hag's players, most of them. And, they're going to be a little bit uneasy about their future. You look at Chelsea, I mean, they're going very well. The 4 wins in their last 6 Premier League fixtures. As I mentioned a moment ago, Cole Palmer, Nicholas Jackson, both in excellent form. They've scored 13 league goals between them this season. And I think that depth of that squad that Chelsea have is going to make all the difference as the fixtures pile up in the coming weeks. Maresca's done a really good job as well of rotating this team, but also keeping some cohesion in the group that's maybe been missing. As we said earlier, I also wouldn't read too much into that Newcastle defeat in the EFL Cup because the team was rotated quite a bit. And it might seem strange to say it after obviously their 5-2 win against Leicester, but I think generally United have been pretty short quality up front. Obviously, they drew blanks against Crystal Palace, Tottenham, Aston Villa in recent Premier League matches. So I can see them struggling a little bit more against Chelsea, and that's why I'd be leaning towards the Blues.
Are you on the same hymn sheet as Liam here, Tom, or are you thinking the change of manager might have an instant impact?
Well, I find it really hard because of the change in manager and the upheaval at Old Trafford to pick a winner. I think this will be a good game, though. I think it'll be entertaining and full of goals. That tends to be the case, doesn't it, when Chelsea are in action this season? I mean, the game against Newcastle is the first time in 13 that they hadn't scored across all competitions. So they tend to be so good going forward. Liam mentioned, Cole Palmer, Nicholas Jackson, in-form attacking players. So Chelsea are going to score at least a couple of goals, I would imagine. But United showed with those 5 against Leicester in the week that maybe they're going to be a bit more front foot, whether it's under Ruud van Nistelrooy or if Amorim has any influence, if he is appointed ahead of the game. I think there'll be a bit more of the shackles off approach for Manchester United. So I think it'll be a pretty open game. It was 4-3 last time they met at Stamford Bridge at the end of last season. Might not quite be that entertaining. I hope it is from a neutral point of view, but I was looking at over 3.5 goals as my bet. Optimistic maybe, but if we get that, I think we'll all be satisfied as neutrals.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree on that front. Manchester United against Chelsea, then the big match of the week in the Premier League, a 4:30 kickoff on Sunday. Time now to look at the rest of the Premier League action. And we kick off with the early game on Saturday, a 12:30 start at St James's Park for Newcastle against Arsenal, which obviously run Manchester United Chelsea close in terms of being the big match of the week. Newcastle 11-4 to claim the victory. Arsenal 19-20 and the draw 11-4. Tom, we'll start with you on this game. I mean, Arsenal have had their injury issues. We've heard every single Arsenal fan mention it over the last couple of weeks or so. Not the ideal fixture to have to go up early on a Saturday to Tyneside to take on a Newcastle team who, despite that defeat against Brighton last time at home, have been pretty decent on the home soil.
Yeah, they have. And Newcastle are always tough to beat at St James's Park, aren't they? And it was a morale-boosting victory over Chelsea in the Cup during the week. I think we mentioned we can't read much of that result from a Chelsea point of view, but I think Newcastle will take confidence from that. Alexander Isak scoring again. He seems to be rediscovering a little bit of form. And Arsenal, as you say, injury concerns. Gabriel Calafiori, are they going to be involved? William Saliba will be back, which will be a boost. I do think Arsenal will have just about enough to win this game. Newcastle in the league haven't picked up that many positive results of late. It's been a stuttering start to the season for Eddie Howe's side. Just 2 points from their last 5 Premier League games. Arsenal, I think, will be able to go on and take the 3 points. I don't think they'll keep a clean sheet, though. I mean, we spoke about the Gunners, particularly last season, being so rock solid defensively, but they've gone 5 league games without a clean sheet now, and the uncertainty, the injuries that they've been picking up, it's been a bit of a makeshift back four over recent weeks. I think they will be vulnerable to conceding. Anthony Gordon's back for Newcastle. I've mentioned Isak looking like he might be returning to form. So I think Newcastle will score. Both teams will get on the score sheet, but Arsenal just about to get over the line with the win.
Is there going to be another big 3 points for the Gunners, Liam, in their battle for the title?
I'd hope so, but I actually can't settle on a winner in this game, and my bet would be both teams to score. Obviously, Arsenal, we know, still missing many players, and especially at the back. Obviously, not only have you got Gabriel and Calafiori, but Tierney and Tomiyasu have also still been out for a while, and so their options are limited in that area of the pitch. And I think on the flip side, Newcastle, their form was obviously taking a hit in the league. They held to that goalless draw by Everton, lost to Brighton, lost to Chelsea. And I mean, goals have been hard to come by for them. To be fair, their strike against Chelsea was their first non-penalty goal, and I think more than about 7 hours. But I think that should help them get over the mental block. And obviously, they did then go on to win against Chelsea in the cup in midweek. So I do think there'll be goals in this one. A bit like City's situation with Rodri and Kyle Walker missing. I think Arsenal are now approaching games with a little bit of we'll just score more than you mentality because of their kind of patchwork defence. They weren't tested by Preston at all in midweek, but this will be a different story. And I think, both teams score is the way to go. It's copped in 6 of Newcastle's 9 league games this term. And it looks a pretty good selection to me.
Okay, well, Arsenal looking to try and win the title, and the current champions will look to try and take advantage of any slip-up from the Gunners, because Manchester City are in action on Saturday at 3 o'clock, and the first of the 3 o'clock kickoffs as they face Bournemouth at the Vitality Stadium. Bournemouth 9-2 the win. It's 4-7 City and 16-5 the draw. Recent performances from City and the injury issues, Liam, would suggest this is not a bad time to play them.
No, absolutely. I mean, Pep Guardiola reckons they've got just, 13 players available after Kanji, Savinho and Ruben Dias looked like they picked up knocks in the cup game against Tottenham. But I think the thing about this Manchester City team is they're pretty good at handling adversity, and I actually still fancy them to beat Bournemouth. And the pick I'd go for would be Manchester City win and both teams to score. City have taken 10 points from a possible 12 on the road in the Premier League this season, and they've coped so far pretty well in the absences of key players. Obviously had Rodri out for quite a while now, and we know how integral he was to them last season. Performances have not always been outstanding for City this season, but the bottom line is they're top of the Premier League, 7 wins from 9 games. They are still getting results, but they have definitely weakened at the back a little bit. 9 goals conceded. There's actually conceded more goals than Nottingham Forest in the Premier League this season, being very permeable at the back. So I think I'd combine a City win with both teams to score against a pretty attacking Bournemouth unit.
13 players would be enough, Tom, won't it, to bring up 3 points again on the road for City?
Well, it'd be classic Pep, wouldn't it, if 5 or 6 of those are available in the starting lineup the weekend at the Vitality. I'm going with a City win, unsurprisingly. 32 games unbeaten in the Premier League. I'm slightly different to Liam. No, I think it might be a little bit more cagey than perhaps we would necessarily expect at first glance. City have just about been getting results, haven't they, in the league? The last 4 wins in the top flight have been by a 1-goal margin. They weren't at their fluid best, were they, against Southampton last weekend? Of course, have then gone on to lose to Spurs in the EFL Cup during the week. They were only 1-0 winners at Bournemouth last season, and I fancy something similar potentially in this game. They might have to grind it out. Bournemouth are pretty good at home. They beat Arsenal earlier in the season, albeit the Gunners were down to 10 men, and I think City might have to grind this out a little bit. Not at the fluid best. If the injuries they've got are to be believed as well, then they're not going to be at full strength. So I'm looking at a City win, but under 2.5 goals in the game. I'm thinking maybe a 1-0 or a 2-0 to City. Not a vintage performance, but dare I say that the kind of performance that a team that are going to be champions needs to put in.
Well, we'll turn our attentions from one end of the table to the other now, because Ipswich against Leicester is another 3 o'clock kickoff at Portman Road. I'm not sure what stage of the season you can still say newly promoted teams, but I'll go with that for the time being anyway, because we're still just about in October, start of November, and Ipswich 5-4 to pick up what will be a much needed victory against the Foxes, who are 21-10, and the draw is 5-2. Tom, we've seen patches of what Ipswich are capable over the last couple of weeks, but the results have gone against them, and I just wonder how much their confidence has been dented.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been a lot of feel-good, and rightly so, about Ipswich heading into this season, but 3 defeats on the bounce now, and the manner of some of those defeats as well have been difficult for Kieran McKenna and his team. Still yet to win as a Premier League side since promotion. They'll want to win this. They'll have earmarked this as a game they should win on home soil against, as you say, another newly promoted team in Leicester. I can see this one finishing as a draw. Ipswich have got 4 draws already this season. Both meetings between the sides in the Championship last term finished 1 apiece. I wouldn't be surprised if something similar played out in this game. I'm not convinced by Leicester either. Yes, they've had a couple of decent victories over recent weeks, and they've got that little bit of a cushion between themselves and the bottom 3. But these two sides are bottom of the Premier League standings in terms of both shots and shots on target this season. So they're both lacking that bit of attacking impetus. And I think they will cancel each other out in this game. And I can see it finishing a draw, which, decent point on the road. It would be probably for Leicester, but for Ipswich, it would be probably another disappointing result.
Yeah, it'd be a huge 3 points for either of these two teams. Liam, is anybody going to get them in your opinion?
Yeah, I think Ipswich can. I'm going to disagree with Tom slightly. I mean, Ipswich obviously still in search of their first Premier League win this season. This bet is probably more guided by not being too keen on Leicester than being keen on Ipswich, if that makes sense. I think Leicester are very fortunate to have the points haul they do at the moment, and they were underwhelming in that loss to Nottingham Forest last Friday, obviously then hammered by Manchester United on Wednesday as well. So I'm not being too keen on them at all. I mean, Ipswich were maybe a tad unlucky to not get anything out of that Brentford game last time out. The G-Tech Community Stadium, it's not an easy place to go. They had a 2-goal lead there, and they at least addressed some of the issues they've had in front of goal in that game. And Leicester have taken just 4 points from their 4 away games this season. And I think, as Tom said, this is a game that Ipswich will have earmarked as essentially a must-win at this stage, so early in the season, I know. But they know that they need to get points on the board, ASAP. And I think this is a good opportunity for them. So I think at a shade of odds against, they're a decent pick.
Well, two teams will be absolutely sick of the sight of each other come Saturday evening meet at Anfield. It's back-to-back games for Liverpool against Brighton. This one, though, is at Anfield after the game at the Amex in midweek. Liverpool 2-5, Brighton 13-2, and the draw is 15-4. 3-2 suggests it was a tight affair on Wednesday evening, Liam. I think Liverpool looked pretty much in control for long periods, but again, maybe a couple of issues and a couple of mistakes at the back let Brighton in. And, bearing in mind what we said earlier on about Brighton on the road, this could be a dangerous fixture for Liverpool.
Yeah, it could be, but I do, I think we're going to see a similar outcome to what we saw in the EFL Cup meeting. 5 goals in that game, and I expect another high-scoring matchup. And I am going to go for Liverpool to win and combine it with over 2.5 goals. I think obviously Liverpool showed decent spirit to snatch that point off Arsenal in the 2-2 draw on Sunday. And I think, they can keep pressure on at the top with a win over Brighton. They've just been terrific under Arne Slot. I mean, 13 points from a possible 15 in their last 5 Premier League matches. And I think Arne Slot really showed his worth as manager against Arsenal in a way he reshaped that midfield, obviously dropped Curtis Jones a bit deeper, and then that obviously opened up the game a little bit, and Liverpool managed to get the point. I think Brighton, they've been going well this season, but I think they'll be taken back a little bit by how they relinquished that 2-goal lead against Wolves last time out, and then obviously also conceding 3 goals against Liverpool. They've actually still got a few players out, Brighton, and we talk about a few different teams in the league with absences at the moment, but Brighton have actually dealt with a few themselves. There's no João Pedro, Matt O'Reilly, James Milner, Adam Webster, Solly March all being sidelined, so they're not necessarily at full strength, and I do think Liverpool will win this, but 4 of Brighton's last 5 league games have produced over 2.5 goals. So I think that's a good way to squeeze some value out of this fixture.
2 managers, Tom, in their first seasons in the Premier League. It's fair to say it's gone probably better than both sets of fans imagined.
Yeah, I think they'd both be really happy with how the season's gone so far. I'm with Liam, very similar in terms of my bet. I think Liverpool will win. I've gone Liverpool and both teams to score. We saw in the midweek cup game. Was anyone surprised with these two teams playing? That it was a 5-goal thriller in the end. As you say, Liverpool always seemingly keeping Brighton at arm's length in that game, and I think they will aware again on Saturday the attacking depth and quality that Arne Slot has at his disposal. I think they'll be able to capitalise on Brighton's high line, which they've been playing and sticking to for the majority of this campaign, conceding goals at a regular rate. But we know Brighton are capable of hurting teams going the other way. They've scored in all 4 of their away league games so far this season. So I expect them to score again, but Liverpool will ultimately win the game. I do think Brighton are maybe slightly in a false position at the moment. I know they've been playing well and scoring goals, but I can't see them sustaining a top 6 challenge over the course of the campaign, and they'll probably will go on to lose this game.
Well, another team who are flying higher than probably most people thought at the moment are Nottingham Forest, and they play host to West Ham at the City Ground at 3:00 on Saturday. 23-20 for Forest to claim another victory. It's 12-5 for the away team and 5-2 the draw. I have to say, I like the look of Forest here when you consider how West Ham have been playing over recent weeks. Tom, what's your suggested bet for this one?
Yeah, completely agree. I'm looking at the Forest win. They've been brilliant, haven't they? So far this season, Forest really defensively resilient. And then when you've got someone like Chris Wood in the form of his life going forward, then you can see why they are riding high in the top half of the standings. Forest, they're looking to win a third consecutive Premier League game. I was looking back; they haven't done that since May 1999, when I think they were already relegated back then. But yeah, so it would be a big achievement after over 25 years to do that. And I do fancy they will get the job done. They've won the last 2 home meetings they've had with West Ham since returning to the top flight. And as you alluded to, and as we discussed earlier on, when we were talking about Manchester United and Erik Ten Hag, West Ham were fortunate to win that game. The jury for me still remains out on Julian Lopetegui. It's been a slower than maybe was expected process in him trying to overhaul the playing style and get West Ham moulded into what he wants. And I think this might be another struggle. They've not been great on the road. Heavy defeat to Liverpool in the EFL Cup, lost 4-1 away at Spurs as well in the league. So, yeah, I think this will be the Forest feel-good factor continuing and they get the home win.
Liam, have you on the same wavelength as myself and Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely tempted by the Forest bet because that's a pretty good price. But I'm going to be a bit bolder, and I've actually gone for a goal scorer, and I've gone for Chris Wood to score first at a bigger price in this game. I mean, Wood has been, as we know, terrific in the Premier League this season. 7 goals in 9 matches in the top flight. He's actually scored a goal every 104 minutes, which is better than the likes of Cole Palmer and Mo Salah. And understandably, Forest looking at a contract extension for him at the moment. He scored 64% of Forest goals in the league as well, so they are pretty reliant on him. But to get a bit more juice out of it rather than just the anytime goal scorer, I like the look of him to score first. It's quite a big price. I mean, and West Ham, they've been slow starters this season. In the Premier League's first half table, they actually sit 19th. So I think Forest could draw first blood in this game. And if they do, well, it's likely going to be Chris Wood because he's the man in form at the moment.
I read an article this week which was surrounding Chris Wood that suggested that the return of the striker with him and Erling Haaland. I was thinking, when have strikers ever gone away? Surely they should be always a priority in a team. Talking about strikers and probably needing one to bang in the goals of late is Southampton, because they play host to Everton at St Mary's on Saturday. Final 3:00 kickoff, 8-5 the home team. It's 13-8 Everton and 12-5 the draw. Saints desperately need a positive result from somewhere. Liam, is it going to come this Saturday?
I'm going to go for the draw, just purely because I don't really like either of these teams at the moment. I think before the whole Erik Ten Hag drama unfolded, I was asked last week who I fancied in the sack race, and I pinpointed Russell Martin just because things aren't going right for Southampton at the moment. The unfortunate thing for them at the moment is they played a lot better against Manchester City. Actually, they had some pretty good transitions from defence to attack, but ultimately didn't matter, and they kind of really picked the wrong game to perform in because they went on, obviously lost that anyway, and 8 defeats and 1 draw in 9 matches. They've actually used 28 players in the Premier League this season. That's more than any other club, so they don't seem entirely sure of what their best combination is either. That said, obviously a home game against Everton is a decent opportunity for points, and I think they could just get a draw from this. I mean, the Toffees obviously rescued a point against Fulham last time out, but in that game they were flat, they were uninventive, and they've drawn 4 of their last 6 games. So I think the stalemate is screaming out to me in this one.
What are you thinking here, Tom, for the clash at St Mary's?
Yeah, I've gone a little bit more bold in favour of Everton and going Everton draw no bet. I mean, the Toffees' results certainly have improved over recent weeks. Liam mentioned their recent draws. They're 5 unbeaten in the league. They weren't great against Fulham last weekend. Fortunate with that Beto, a goal in stoppage time to snatch a share of the spoils. But I think they should have enough know-how about them to get the result. Recent history against newly promoted sides, Everton are unbeaten in 6 away to such teams. That dates back to November 2022. I think they beat Ipswich last time out, another of the newly promoted sides in the last away game, I should say. And I think they'll just have that Premier League know-how, a bit more punch about them in the final third as well to edge past Southampton. I think it will be tight, close. There'll be 1 goal in it. 4 of Southampton's 8 defeats this season have been by a 1-goal margin, and they have slightly improved. Liam mentioned the performance against Manchester City. They got a win against Stoke in the Cup during the week as well. But I do just think maybe a 1-0. I think Everton will just nick it.
Well, I've lost count of how many times I've said this week is a massive game to come, and a big game, certainly at the bottom end of the table, and none bigger than the 5:30 match on Saturday. Wolves against Crystal Palace. Palace fresh from their first league win of the season. Wolves still looking for theirs. The home team 31-20, Palace 7-4, and it's 12-5 the draw. Is anybody going to pick up these big 3 points, Tom?
I'm not sure. I find it really hard to call a winner. I've looked at the goals market for my bet over 2.5. Wolves, they've scored goals. They've got the best attack of anyone in the bottom five. They've scored more goals than Nottingham Forest, and we've been singing the praises of them on this podcast. So Wolves know how to score, but they also concede. The last 7 games have gone over 2.5 goals. Palace aren't as free scoring, but they'll be boosted by the last couple of results they have had, beating Tottenham in the league, then winning at Aston Villa in the EFL Cup. Notably, Jean-Philippe Mateta scored against Spurs. Eberechi Eze set him up in that game, and then he himself was on the score sheet during the week. So those creative players that were so important to Crystal Palace when they were on that fantastic run towards the end of last season may just be coming back into form. So yeah, I expect this to buck the trend of 2 struggling sides, if you like, and feature goals going for over 2.5. Both meetings last season went beyond that threshold as well. So yeah, this might be more entertaining than it perhaps looks at first glance.
Yeah, I tend to agree on that front, Tom. I noticed that Wolves have conceded 5 more goals than anybody else in the league so far this season. Liam, is that going to be a downfall again on Saturday, or are we going to see them pick up a first win?
I think they can pick up a first win. I think they're value to do so. I mean, Wolves they just have 2 points to their name in the Premier League this season, but their expected points total actually sits at 7.14. So in short, I think they are a little bit unfortunate to be as low as 19th in the league. And they've actually played some pretty good football this season. I mean, the point away to Brighton was a good result. They showed great tenacity going forwards in that game, and they've got quality in those areas with, Mateus Cunha, Jorgen Strand-Larsen, Nelson Semedo as well. So I do think it's about time Wolves got their first win of the season. I had Palace at the start of the season actually down to make the top half, and I've been very underwhelmed by them. But the win over Tottenham last time out should do them the world of good going forwards. That said, they have scored just twice in their last 5 league fixtures. And I think that win over Aston Villa in the EFL Cup in midweek will do them more harm than good as in terms of this fixture, at least, because I think it was quite an energy-sapping fixture. They didn't have a lot of the ball in that game. Wolves, meanwhile, they weren't involved in midweek, so they could be a little bit fresher. And given how they've played, I think it's about time they got 3 points on the board, and I think this is the game that they'll do it in.
2 more games to look at in the Premier League this weekend, starting with the early kickoff on Sunday. Tottenham against Aston Villa. Well, screams goals to me at the moment. Tottenham 10-11 to win the game, 13-5 Aston Villa, and the draw 3-1. What's your best bet here, Liam?
Yeah, going for goals over 3.5 specifically. I wasn't going anywhere near a result in this one. But I think, the goals is the more reliable angle. I mean, Tottenham have netted 18 times in the Premier League this season. That means they're averaging 2 per game. And they're actually second in the Premier League when it comes to expected goals for this season with 19.3. Villa have obviously been playing some excellent football under Unai Emery. They've scored at least twice in their last 6 of their last 9 matches, in the Premier League. Obviously, Ollie Watkins, we know what he's capable of, scored 5 goals, but obviously been ably supported this season by John Duran, who's also on 4 league goals himself. So there's plenty of goal scorers in this game. We probably could see the introduction of Heung-min Son again for Tottenham as well. So for that reason, I'm going for the goals angle, and over 3.5 is my bet.
I noticed, Tom, that Villa have won the last 2 visits to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Are they going to make it 3?
I think they might. I agree with Liam. This is a game that should feature plenty of goals, but at that price, Villa are really tempting. I mean, they're odds against still if you go in the draw no bet market as well, and that's what I've edged towards in this game. As you say, they've won on the last 2 visits to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Been really good away from home in the league this season as well, taking 10 points from a possible 12. They were much changed against Crystal Palace in the Cup during the week. Unai Emery rotated his lineup. Nice to see Tyrone Mings back out on the pitch after such a long injury absence, but he'll go back to his regular starting lineup, you'd imagine, for this game. And, it is difficult to call a winner. It's so hard to predict Tottenham in particular at this moment in time, but I can't look away from the odds against price in the draw no bet Villa market. So yeah, I'm siding towards another away win for Unai Emery's side.
Well, last but not least, Monday evening's game in the Premier League, an 8 o'clock kickoff at Craven Cottage, where Fulham take on Brentford. Fulham evens to pick up the win. It's 5-2 Brentford and 27-10 the draw. Tom, what are you thinking here?
Yeah, I fancy Fulham. I watched them against Everton last weekend, and I was really impressed with how they played. They were unfortunate, maybe a little bit sloppy in the end to concede that late equalising goal. But there's a really nice balance to this Fulham side. They've got Raul Jimenez in form up front with Alex Iwobi, who was great against Everton, Emil Smith-Rowe as well. Plenty of creative players, but there's a good, solid defensive base as well. Joachim Andersen will be back from suspension, you'd imagine, for this game. So I fancy Fulham. Brentford have been so good in games this season, but they've all been at home, where they've had some excellent results, scoring a lot of goals. Away from home, they've lost all of their games in the Premier League. So Thomas Frank's side have been picking their battles a little bit this season, and I just think Fulham they'll return to winning ways. They haven't won in 3, but they're putting a good performance away at Manchester City. They have beaten Newcastle at home this season, so I think Fulham at evens is good value.
What's your thoughts on the Monday game, Liam?
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I put this tip up on a game, but I'm going to go for both teams to score in both halves. I was looking at over 3.5 goals in this contest, but there's quite a jump from that to the both teams to score in both halves bet. And the reason I'm going for that is these are two teams who just seem to love to throw away leads. I mean, following their 1-1 draw with Everton last time out, Fulham have dropped 10 points from winning positions this season. Only one team have dropped more points than that, and that is Brentford with 11 points. So two teams who don't know really how to hold on to a lead. And for me, that suggests that there could be goals throughout this contest. I mean, Brentford's league matches, they've averaged 4 goals per game this season, a very high figure. And both teams have scored in 8 of Brentford's 9 league games and 7 of Fulham's 9 league games. So these two teams, good going forwards, but permeable at the back. And I think that could result in a very open and entertaining contest on Monday night.
Okay, well, that's the Premier League covered then. Up next, it's the EFL and the FA Cup. Well, we'll start off with the EFL match in focus this week, and it's a championship clash at the New Den where Millwall and Burnley go head-to-head. It's a 3 o'clock kickoff on Sunday live on Sky Sports, and I'll run you through the prices in a moment. But Tom, looking at this game, it's arguably between a team which was probably expected to be down at the bottom end of the table and one that was expected to be around the top. And as ever with a championship, a bit of inconsistency means that it's hard to know where you'd expect them to finish at the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Burnley will fancy themselves to be in and around the automatic promotion positions come the end of the campaign. That they're currently second, and I think Scott Parker's doing a really good job. I mean, he took over a Burnley side who went down under Vincent Kompany last season, were very expansive, and he's made them difficult to beat. There's not that many goals in Burnley's games, but they've got the best defence in the Championship, conceding just 5. They've scored 17, but 9 of those were in their first 2 fixtures. Since then, they've struggled. They've struggled somewhat for goals. For me, this is a tight and a tense game potentially. We spoke about a lot of goals in the Premier League potentially this weekend. I don't think there'll be that many in this one.
No, it doesn't look that way when you consider recent games and performances. Millwall 7-4 to claim the victory in this game. Burnley 17-10 and the draw 21-10. Where are you looking for your bet for the big EFL game, Tom?
Yeah, well, I certainly think under 2.5 goals is the way to go. But I'm gonna combine that with Burnley getting the win as well. They've been beaten in their last 7 against Millwall, and I just think they'll have a little bit extra quality. Millwall have improved over recent weeks, and they've had some decent home victories, but they've been against Plymouth, Preston and Sheffield Wednesday. None of those teams are anywhere near the quality of Burnley, and Burnley are so good defensively. I think they'll suffocate Millwall's attack and maybe nick one on the break, and I could see them maybe winning by just 1-0, maybe 2-0 push. But yeah, Burnley and under 2.5 goals.
Well, of course, we normally have League One and League Two to focus on, as well as the Championship, but the FA Cup takes precedence for the lower two divisions this weekend, with the remaining non-league teams also in action. We did have a regular Assist listener say to us about Wycombe Wanderers' fantastic form, and I think Wycombe have one of the best ties of the weekend at home to high-flying York City of the National League, which should be a cracking encounter. But Tom's got his three best bets to look forward to now across both the Championship and the FA Cup for this weekend. And Tom, where are we looking first?
Yeah, well, I'll start with the FA Cup because, it's the first round. We've got to be looking towards a potential giant killing. And I think National League Southside Worthing are possibly the potential giant killers. They're taking on the EFL's bottom club, Morecambe, at home. And I fancy them, odds against to qualify. FA Cup first round games, there's no replays from this season. So, this one could go all the way to penalties potentially. So I fancy Worthing. They're riding high, pushing for the playoff positions in the National League South. They've only lost 2 of their last 14 games in all competitions and have won 5 of their last 6 at home. They've come through 3 qualifying rounds to reach the first round proper for the second season in a row. And I think they can get one over on Morecambe. Morecambe had all kinds of problems over the summer, a transfer embargo. Then I think they signed 15 players in one day once that embargo was lifted, and just 7 points in League Two so far this season. They've lost their last 3, and they really shipped some comical goals, letting in 5 against Chesterfield last time out. Derek Adams is fighting a real uphill battle to try and keep Morecambe in League Two. That's got to be their focus. I think they may come up unstuck. Worthing, this is one of the biggest games they've had for a long, long time. They've not been in the second round of the FA Cup for over 40 years. This is a great opportunity for them. I really do fancy Worthing to get the victory, or to qualify, at least probably get the victory as well.
Okay, so Worthing's the first selection. What's pick number 2?
Yeah, I think there's really good value to be had in the Championship. I'm looking at the game that will be taking place at Loftus Road between second bottom QPR and league leader Sunderland. And you've got to fancy Sunderland odds against to win this game. They're absolutely flying, aren't they, this season? I don't think anyone could have expected them to perform so well under Regis Lebris. They've won 4 of their 6 away games in the league. They've got the best away record in the division as well. And, QPR really struggling. No win in 9 in all competitions. The pressure, you've got to say, is probably starting to mount on Martí Cifuentes, who did such a good job last season steering them away from the relegation zone, but they're back down there again this season. Sunderland, on their last 2 visits to QPR, they've won 3-0 and 3-1. They weren't in the kind of form they're in now for either of those 2 games. So I think they should win this one. Maybe not comfortably, but there's great value to be had there with the league leaders on the road.
Yeah, I was surprised to see them odds against, I'll be honest. And the final selection of your 3 picks, Tom, is going to be who?
Yeah, it's another game in the Championship, 2 of the top 6, Blackburn and Sheffield United. I think this is going to be really tight, though. I've selected under 2.5 goals. I'd even be tempted to go under 1.5 because there hasn't been too much goal-scoring excitement for 3 of these 2 teams over recent weeks. Just 2 goals scored across Blackburn's last 3 games. Whilst under 2.5 goals have been a winning bet in 6 of the Lancashire club's last 9 league fixtures. Sheffield United come into this one on the back of successive away defeats without scoring, and each of their last 11 fixtures across league and cup have featured no more than 2 goals. So this, tight, tense defences on top. I have to credit Sheffield United. Conceded over 100 goals in the Premier League last season. They've got one of the tightest defences in the Championship so far. This is a 1-0 either way for me.
Okay, so just to remind you of the 3 selections for the EFL and FA Cup from Tom McGarry: Worthing, Sunderland, and under 2.5 goals for the Blackburn Sheffield United Championship clash. It's Liam's turn now, and we'll start off with the Bet Builder. Okay, so 3 legs of the Bet Builder. Firstly, Liam, which game are we looking at in particular?
So we're going for Tottenham against Aston Villa, one of the highlights of the weekend, I'd say. And for the first leg of this Bet Builder, we're going to go for both teams to score. As I said, I see goals in this game. Both teams' scores landed in 7 of Aston Villa's 9 league games this season. So I think the net can bulge at both ends, most definitely. Looking at obviously a goal scorer potentially in this game, Heung-min Son looks as though he could be coming back into the team, potentially into the starting lineup. He'll be eager to hit the ground running, and so I fancy him to score his 4th league goal of the season. And I'm going to complete the bet builder with Luca Digne to be booked. Now, Digne's committed 12 fouls in the league this season, gone into the book 3 times already, so I think he's also a good pick to be shown a yellow card in this game.
Okay, so they are Liam's picks for the bet builder for the Tottenham-Aston Villa game on Sunday. Mark Langdon always gives us, of course, a prop shop, a couple of options from that as well. What are we looking at here today, Liam?
Yeah, so I've got a couple here, as you say. The first one is in the game between Bournemouth and Manchester City. I'm going for Antoine Semenyo to have a shot on target. Only Erling Haaland has had more shots than Semenyo in the Premier League this season. And obviously the forward plays in a very front-footed Bournemouth team, which averages just shy of 16 shots per match. So I can see him steering one on target against the depleted Citizens. My other prop bet is Ryan Gravenberch to be carded in the game between Liverpool and Brighton. Now, Brighton have had the 4th highest average possession in the Premier League this season. I think that midfield battle with Liverpool at Anfield could be pretty intense. Gravenberch has committed 15 fouls this season and been shown 2 cards, so I think it's worth a bet for him to go into the book in that contest.
Okay, cheers, Liam. And that is the bet builder and the prop shop ticked off. It just remains to give you our assist treble and our naps for this week as well. We'll start off with the assist treble, and Tom will start with your selection.
Yeah, I've mentioned this game already, but Sunderland to win away at QPR, odds against value for me. It's a really good bet considering the form that I mentioned of both sides at the moment.
And Liam, what's your pick for the treble?
I'm going to go for Hull to beat Portsmouth. Hull have really shown some improved resilience in the Championship. Back-to-back draws against Burnley and Derby, but watched them against Burnley and they were actually pretty good. Pompey obviously failed to hold on to a lead in the 2-1 loss to Sheffield Wednesday last time out and remain rock bottom of the Championship.
Well, I'm going to make it a Championship triple header because I've gone for Oxford to beat Swansea at around about 9-5 in the game at the Kassam Stadium. Oxford are unbeaten in 6 at home in the Championship this season. Yes, the last 3 have been draws, but a couple of those were against Burnley and West Brom teams, of course, battling at the top end of the table. Swansea, well, 2 defeats and a draw in their last 3 on the road, but perhaps more importantly, the stat that they haven't scored in their last 5 games, Swansea. You don't know where the goals are going to come from. I think Oxford have got more than enough to beat them at home on Saturday. So just a reminder, the assist treble this weekend is Sunderland, Hull and Oxford. And we'll conclude this week's programme with the naps of both Tom and Liam. Liam, we'll start with your nap. Where are you looking?
I'm going to go to the Bundesliga for this one, and I'm going to go for Hoffenheim to beat St. Pauli. It's been a miserable return to the Bundesliga for St. Pauli. They've collected just 5 points from their first 8 games and most firmly in the relegation mix. Hoffenheim are actually just a place above them in the league standings, but they picked up 5 points from their last 3 games. As part of that, they recorded decent draws on the road against Stuttgart and Heidenheim, both teams doing well. But they also ran away 3-1 winners against Bochum. I think with home advantage behind them, they look a great bet.
And Tom, what's your nap this week?
Yeah, I'm sticking with my Worthing to qualify in the FA Cup against Morecambe. I do really fancy this. You know, Worthing looking to cause a shock, but would it be that much of a shock against a team Morecambe at the bottom of League Two and really struggling? Yes, I fancy Worthing to qualify on the day.
Okay, well, my big thanks to Liam Flin and Tom McGarry for stepping in so ably to replace Mark Langdon and Dan Childs. It's goodbye from me. And don't forget, of course, to like, subscribe and comment. And if you do like your golf, of course, don't miss the Sweet Spot every Tuesday with Steve Palmer. We'll be back on Monday for a Champions League special, looking ahead to the latest round of fixtures in Europe's top club competition. But until then, enjoy your football this weekend and please remember to gamble responsibly.